You're watching Global Trade This Week with Pete Mento and Doug Draper.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to what I'm sure is going to be a very low-key edition of Global Trade This Week. I mean, there's not much going on. We had to come up, we were digging deep in the barrel trying to find something to talk about today, Doug and I. But luckily, there was some stuff around. Yeah. So with me, as usual, is my good friend Doug Draper. Doug, it appears you are in Colorado, my friend.
I am. Yeah, Troy's with me up there. And it's been kind of a crazy weekend. It's interesting when the Olympics are on and big news happens on a Friday, it just kind of gets lost. And then people come in on Monday and be like, holy shit, what just happened? Yeah. So I think a lot of that is what we're going to talk about today. So,
or if you're like me and you just mainline data into a port in the back of your head, I didn't sleep much last night. Once things started going south, I was up watching Bloomberg most of the night. So
I don't know what to say about that. But before we jump into it, based on the light behind you, and you are in the nation's capital.
I am.
Correct?
Yep, I am. I know you're jealous. It is hot and nasty, and but I am. I wanted to point something out today, Doug. I'm wearing a new cover. You see my lid here.
Yeah. UCI.
University of California, Irvine. Do you know who that mascot is? It's the only reason I bought this hat.
I do. It's the Anteaters.
And what's his name?
Alvin? I don't know. Peter
the Anteater.
Ah, there we go.
Once I heard that, I had to have one of these hats. Peter the Anteater. This is going to be in heavy rotation. I know that UC is it Santa? No, UC Santa.
Santa Cruz.
Santa Cruz fighting banana slugs. I love that as well. But their mascot isn't nearly as aesthetically pleasing. So.
Yeah. No, I like it.
Well, I introduced the show, Douglas.
Yes.
Dougie. So you get the first topic, my friend.
All right. Well, mine are not the opposite of yours, but I think your topics and our commentary will dominate. But I saw something the other day about our good company, Tesla. They're going to start, or they are in the process of building a semi-gigafactory right next to their massive gigafactory outside of Sparks in Reno, Nevada. So they're breaking ground. They're full on with EV semis. They want to start producing at the end of 2025, right? And this is construction. And they want to have them up and running. So that's not that long, or that's not that far out, right? But not even 18 months. And once they get that thing fired up, they want to crank out 50,000 semis a year, which is great. All of that is nice. But let's get back to reality of what's going on. Number one reality, there's only 140 Tesla trucks that are out there zipping around. About 100 are in use. And of that, 36 are used by PepsiCo, Pepsi out in California. The rest are kind of used by Tesla themselves. So there's not a lot of people using these semis. And Pepsi pretty much got subsidies in order to get those 36 trucks. So they're just kind of zipping around. They're logoed. They look kind of cool. It's almost more marketing than substance there, right? So when Pepsi brought them on board, there was a 30% failure rate. Wow. And like I said, the government, and they fixed it all, right? I'm not here to badmouth Tesla. I mean, it's a whole new vehicle. So anyway, the government of California is subsidizing it. Pepsi, it's kind of a marketing ploy. They're kind of using it. It's primarily in and out of one distribution center. They want to crank out 50,000 a year. If anybody can do it, it's Tesla. They got good brand recognition. They're very creative or whatever. But this concept and this stuff it's not years away, Pete. It's decades away before this goes on. And really, the companies and where this is going to go is short haul lanes in gateway cities. So LA, Dallas, Chicago, Atlanta, the New York metro area, those gateways. And I think private fleets are going to jump on it. Exactly. Just take the Pepsi model, except New York will subsidize it and Georgia will subsidize it. And I don't know if Texas will subsidize it, but LA will subsidize it. And so it's interesting. I get it. It's probably needed, but the adaptation of this whole concept is still many, many, not years, but decades out before it's going to be really viable. So I don't know. Have you heard about this plan? What's your general take on the beyond Tesla, just kind of the EV semi market?
Well, I speak every year at an automotive conference in South Carolina. Big fans of the show, by the way. So hey to Amy and everybody else out there. One of the more interesting conversations I had was with a gentleman who was operating electric trucks now. I didn't get the brand, but I know there's only a couple of them. And he said that it's complicated for them because they're so heavy, he can't move as much. So the economics are sort of backward right now. I mean, he does get a pretty amazing tax write-off on it and tax credits, but their ability to actually turn a profit on them is difficult because they can't move as much because of the weight of the truck. And I never asked him this, but I mean, what about drayage, Doug? Would that make sense for this sort of a setup? It sounds like it would.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. The short haul in those gateway markets would be perfect. But I think the other thing is that you want to jam that ocean container as heavy as you possibly can, right? So if you're pulling a can that's 40,000 pounds and your gross vehicle weight is, not double, but it's excessive, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, how much can they pull?
Yeah. Another thing I wondered about when I was reading about this morning was, why aren't they just focusing on things like straight trucks and box trucks first? It seems because of the way that it's set up and the model that it's set up, it would make a lot more sense to me. And I don't know why they're not focusing on that first.
Yeah, that's a great question. If anybody in our audience knows, kick us a line, because I don't know. It's a very, very valid point, right?
I mean, they have alternative fuels like liquid propane, natural gas in them now, and it would make sense to me.
Yeah, well, EV trucks.
I cannot talk trash about Tesla. I can't talk trash about Tesla, but I will talk trash about Reno, Nevada. 1 star, cannot recommend. Did not enjoy my time there at all.
Well, the only time I've been to Reno was when I flew in there and took a burner bus up to Burning Man. God, probably 7 years ago now. That's the only experience I've ever had with Reno. So I was in and out in a heartbeat, and then super hungover and feeling terrible about my body when I left.
I still want pictures of Doug at Burning Man. I think that's
nice.
That's something.
All right, buddy. This is when the show starts. This is when the fun begins. So what's your topic, my friend? I know what it is, so let it rip.
Yeah. At the beginning of at the end of last year, we did our prediction episode. And I said that there were a number of things that were going to happen in line. I told you in February, one of them, a couple more months, another one. And it is almost a curse being this right all the time, Doug. But the collapse of the Japanese banking system, central banking system, along with their attempt to just gingerly zhuzh it a little bit, and then a greater fear of all kinds of things happening at once, has caused a global sell-off in markets, particularly focused on high tech and things that support high tech. And because these stock exchanges are so heavily invested in ideas that haven't necessarily come to fruition or that are still building, that's a big reason for it. But if you were to ask 20 economists right now, why is today so crazy? You probably get 15 different answers. It has a lot to do with the United States, our job numbers, the fact that there's a feeling that we're already in a recession. We just haven't had a quarter to report it yet. Inflation numbers bouncing a little bit, but really not dropping dramatically. And the Fed's non-desire to drop the prime rate. You add to that the presidential election and just a complete chaos that's going on around the world, wondering what will the American market look like in 4 or 5 months. And then on top of that one, Iran and Israel caught up in some pretty ugly emotional fighting right now. Iran did come out and say they didn't plan on, blowing this thing to pieces, which is nice. But the other side of it is, they're not going to blow Israel to pieces. They're trying to make a limited response, but it's still enough to spook markets. So this is a broad correction. It's everything from oil and certain commodities. However, other commodities are doing quite well. But even Bitcoin, yes, Keenan, even Bitcoin is getting a good swift kick in the teeth. The thing that drives me the craziest, Doug, here is that no one's 100% sure why it happened, but I can tell you that this is the first in a long line of massive corrections to our economic system.
Yeah.
And you heard it here first in December on Global Trade This Week.
Nice. Yes, I remember that. It was very clear. There was a couple of predictions. I was like, wait, what? But this one, it just seems like, well, we talked about how it was the roaring 20s, right? Post-COVID for 18 months or something like that. And this is just more fallout. It will be interesting. The Intel situation that happened on Friday caught my attention, right? It's just kind of like, what happened? They're part of the beneficiary of the CHIPS Act down in Arizona. They're building this massive plant. Those take a long time to come on board. So it's still a couple of years out. But, they're talking about how they didn't pivot to support mobile and AI development. They were still worried about chips, or not worried. They were focused on chips for computers more than the mobile. So I don't know. It's just like this confluence of craziness that's going on, and we shall see. It's not the end of the story; it's the beginning.
Great album name, Doug. Confluence of Craziness.
Yes. Well, yeah. I'll take it.
Well, that leads us to halftime, Doug. So halftime brought to you by our friends at Cap Logistics. Thank them as always. We thank them all as always for their financial support and technical support, and for loaning us Keenan on his work study in junior high. It's very kind to them all. So, Doug, you going first? Am I going first? You're going first? Okay.
Why don't you go first?
Okay. So we spoke last week about the Olympics. Doug and I are both Olympics heads. I did not know about this competition, but have you watched kayak cross yet, Doug?
No, I don't know what that is.
Wow, it's crazy. So they've got these kayaks set up, and it's almost like imagine motocross, but it's in rapids with crazy water. And these guys, they race one another, and it's bedlam. Like, it's total bedlam. It looks super dangerous, and it's really chaotic and wild. It's a lot of fun. If you would have told me that I would have been glued to the television watching guys in kayaks, I would have thought you were smoking crack. But I can't get enough of it. It's really fascinating. And the people that do it, they're crazy. So it's a lot of fun. It feels like it belongs more on the X Games than it does the Olympics. Yeah, but it's really cool, man.
What countries are excelling?
Yeah, we're doing really well. It's clearly like a bunch of dudes from Colorado and Montana and Wyoming that have probably done some heroic doses of edibles just out there, like, killing it. It's wild. You got to watch it.
Yeah, I will. There's so many little, I've been watching the Olympics every night on NBC prime time. I'm still old school like that. I'm not going to Peacock. And they're just doing snippets of all these events that you and I have never heard of, right? I think the one everybody has seen this, right? It's that shooter from Turkey with his hands just hanging out. I loved it.
In his blue jeans. I was at a happy hour last week in Phoenix, and someone said it's almost like they called some CIA guy to, like, get the jackal on the phone. He's like, he's running a shawarma place, or like he's got a car rental place. And like, we have to activate. He was like, I've told you, I'm out of the game. They're like, no, you've got to come in. Doesn't even have a uniform. Just rolls up in tennis shoes and blue jeans, a couple of little soft ear protection, raises it with one hand and shoots a perfect round. It was awesome.
Yeah.
And apparently he walked away from the competition and asked someone, where can I go smoke a cigarette? Like, he went outside and, like, had a smoke after.
Loved it. I was going to make a joke about that would be something that he did, but the fact that it really happened is even better.
Next picture of him is him at home with his cat. Like, he's just this chill dude. I don't know. I'd like to hang out with him.
Yeah. Interesting.
Oh, also, Doug, I haven't seen breakdancing yet. Have you seen that yet?
No. There's too many skateboarding, breakdancing. There's probably a few others. It's like, why is that an Olympic sport?
Got to keep the kids interested. Anyway, what you got, Doug?
All right, I'll just be super quick with mine. I noticed, or I read an article the other day on Freight Caviar about. No, actually, it wasn't. I'm trying to think. It was this thing called Morning Brew. You ever heard of that? It's a daily kind of news feed. It's these guys up in New York City. It's funny. They bring up some good stories. But what they brought up was that small cars are making a comeback, right? Essentially, I think they said the average cost of a pickup truck's over $60,000, and with the cost of money, there's tons of incentives from dealerships to buy these cars that are smaller. The financing is pretty aggressive, and obviously, you're not financing as much money. But the one thing it led me to believe is that could Shein or Temu be jumping into the car market, right? Hey, I'll buy a car for 20 grand. I'll zip around with it. And when I don't want it in a couple of years or 1 year, I'll just chuck it aside and get something else. So it was interesting. I have our listeners look at some of the trends that smaller vehicles, not specific to any model or make or car manufacturer, but just small cars in general are kind of rebounding and becoming more popular.
I hate them, Doug. I detest them. This is one of those ways that I'm an ugly American. If I lived in London, I'd drive a Suburban with a left-hand drive. Like I absolutely can't stand small cars. I drive a Jeep Wrangler, which is pretty small, frankly. But, my idea of a small car is an S-Class Mercedes-Benz or, an F-250. Like even an F-150 is too small for me. I'm a powerfully built man. I need room. So small cars, to me, they just don't do it. I understand the utility. I get it. You live in a city. It's hard to park. They get great gas mileage, all that stuff if you're a commuter. Not for Big Daddy. I ain't doing it. Buddy.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. I think your first car was a VW Thing, right? For some reason that sticks in my mind.
And then I had a Carmen Ghia, which was very small. Yeah. And I had a Lacar, which was very small. And then I had a Chevy Spectrum hatchback, which was pretty small too. That car would not die, brother. It would not.
Yeah. A red VW Bug convertible. That's what I zipped around Wichita, Kansas in. I thought I was the coolest guy in town.
You were, Doug. Were you blasting like Wenger and Dio and?
Oh yeah. And it was the crappy system, so the speakers would just pop and get all gargly when you cranked it up.
I know it well, Tom.
Didn't matter.
It's something like I don't see people buying aftermarket stereos and stuff anymore. Like when we were younger, that was like a thing. Everybody would steal your car.
Yeah, I remember getting Crutchfield magazine and flipping through there and looking at all the different speakers and stuff.
Yep. Going to Circuit City and Tweeter and listening to stuff on the walls. Some guy who clearly sells dope on the side telling you all about the different dynamics of it. Yeah.
For sure. All right. Well, that was brought to us by Cap Logistics. Please visit caplogistics.com. They're a great supporter of the show. They actually don't support the show. They put on the show. And we appreciate them letting us banter back and forth every single week. So my second topic, I'm going to just hammer it out. I think the headline should be, hello, McFly, that there's two trends that I've seen that are really going to start, I think, rearing its ugly head, if that's the right term, in 2025. Number one is industrial development pipeline. So who's out there building warehouses, right? That is slowly declining. If you look at some statistics, like the last 4 to 5 quarters, the warehouses that are coming on board and coming to market dramatically exceeds the number of new builds that are in the works to build more warehouses, right? So yeah, there's plenty coming online now, but there's nothing in the pipeline. And obviously there's been, in my opinion, a little bit of overbuild because you can't put a building up in 2 seconds after COVID, right? I'd almost put it at the Peloton. Everybody needed warehouse space. Let's build. People's consumer buying habits pivoted so quickly. Peloton couldn't keep up. And so the starts, I talk about housing starts. This would be the equivalent of a warehouse start. Is really on the decline, and there's just not much in the pipeline. So that's one thing. So what happens whenever there's not a lot of houses being built? There's a housing shortage. So I think we're going to see some of that, but this is not going to transpire for another year or so. And the other thing I noticed, Pete, is that truck brokers, there's a decline. There's been about 11%. This is what I got from Freight Caviar, about 11% year over year decline. So there's brokerage companies that are basically closing up and going out of business. Now, that doesn't mean the capacity of the trucks out there is changing. It just means the access, right? So if you have many brokers to access the trucks that you need, that access point is shrinking, which means there's less people that can offer the service, which means the price is going to go up. So I think the Hey McFly moment is going to be in 2025. It's going to be a seller's market more so than a buyer's market that we've experienced in post-COVID. There's the warehouse crunch that's going to transpire, and the access to trucks is decreasing because the brokerage firms, albeit a lot of them are smaller mom and pops, but those two things are going to come to I'm going to use the word again, confluence. and we're going to see those repercussions next year. So I don't know if you've heard of either one of those topics or have any thoughts.
I just, tangentially, right? So we have million square foot warehouses all over the place. Like we have these, and then we'll have like 2 or 3 of them next to each other. They're so big, they have drones that go up and down and like pick up. I mean, they're just massive, buddy. Yeah, I know you hate it. I know. The change in our economy towards focuses on e-commerce and different distribution models is really facilitating a change in how we look at warehousing. And I find it fascinating how quickly they go up with these, poured cement walls, and you buy a piece of dirt and you're operational pretty quick. So I'm a little concerned that there are parts of the world where it seems to be built up, but other parts where it's not. I don't know, Doug, like in the middle of the country in places like Kansas, Oklahoma, Nebraska, right? Are we building up for better distribution, or are we just building up to hold on to inventory? So that was really where my question came about this one.
Yeah. Was that a question posed to me?
Yeah. You're the warehousing expert, not this cowboy. Yeah.
Well, we'll see. I don't think there's been a big pivot. This is my take, and somebody on listening here is going to be, Draper, you're a moron, right? But I still think, as I said, gateway markets dominate. People want to get their product off of the water as fast as they can, especially if they're financing inventory. I don't want it to go inland to Wichita, Kansas, where I can buy dirt cheaper. Now, in some instances, there's viability to that, but I still think that the growth is, in major cities. And Phoenix is going gangbusters. You were down there last a week ago or so. Yeah. Dallas has land beyond belief, so they're sprawling. But those are big, top 10 cities in the entire country. So there's some growth there. But I personally, in my experience, have still seen larger metro areas that are really where people are migrating.
Yeah, well, that's a fascinating thing. We'll definitely keep an eye on it. More bad news on my end.
Bring us home,
buddy. Like, we're all sitting here waiting for news about whether or not Iran has taken a shot at Israel. And, Hezbollah's in the mix now. America has sent carrier groups over there, another carrier group, right? And it would appear that there's no slowing down. There's no cooling off right now of what's going on in the Red Sea. And that's a challenging news. I don't want to say it's bad, but it's challenging news for the supply chain, because we have to deal with the increased elongated supply chain and routes, the extra cost in fuel, extra cost in personnel that goes along with it, the unavailability of equipment, because, the containers are on one end, they got to get to the other so that you have a chance to it. So really the whole point of this is, I think, Doug, it's going to be worse. I think that the issues in the Red Sea are actually going to be worse, and I don't see them ending anytime soon until after the presidential election. And as a matter of fact, I think they might get much, much worse.
I think the presidential election will be the pivot point, right? It's not going to happen on, the Wednesday after election day, but I think that will. Let's see what happens in first quarter. But it's like a flare up, right? Things kind of flare up, people freak out, rightly so. They reposition their equipment, they go around the troubled area, things kind of calm down, and then insert a new bad actor that you had just indicated, and things flare up again. So I think it's going to be ebbs and flows, but to get back to where it was before October 6th last year, it's just
it's going to be a while.
Away. Yeah. So good deal. Well, I think that brings us to a close on this week's edition of Global Trade This Week. I'm Doug Draper, coming to you from my home in Colorado, and Pete's in the nation's capital. So we are home this week, and that's great. So thank you all for listening. What?
I leave for San Diego in the morning, and then I'm in Baltimore for Propeller Club Crab Feast. And no, I'm not. Next week I'm in Chicago. It never ends, brother.
You're home at least for today. So, and we hope that everybody enjoyed the show. Please listen, push us out there. You can access us on all the social sites to listen. And we can't thank Cap Logistics enough for making this thing happen. And Pete, you love to say this, so if it's happening in the world related to trade, you'll hear it here first, at least our 2 cents on the topics, and that'll take it. So we'll see you next week, Pete. Thanks, man.
See you, buddy. See ya.
All right, take care.
Bye.